This is the Rough Fairways podcast. Hello and welcome to the Rough Fairways podcast. This week's guest is Alex Beach. But before we get to Alex, a word from our sponsor. Rough Fairways is brought to you by Asher Golf. Are you tired of going to your local golf retailer and seeing a wall of boring white golf gloves? Check out Asher Golf. Born out of a disrespect for the mundane, Asher Golf specializes in adding style to your game so you can look good, feel good, and play better on the course. Each premium glove is made from single cut AAA Cabretta leather, the best leather you can get in a golf glove. Head on over to ashergolf.com and check them out. And get ready for the golf season today. And now, here is Alex. Enjoy the conversation. These idiots behind the microphone. It is our hobby. Hopefully, maybe someday a job, but yeah.
Well, and one day I hope it to be a hobby of mine. But
there you go. Do you like radio as well?
I do. I mean, I like the whole thing. There's been so much that has changed in the last year and kind of opened my eyes to things. And the radio, like what you guys do, the podcast thing. I think it's fun.
Sure,
it's cool.
Yeah. Well, shoot, and plus we get to meet guys like you because we both just love golf. That's why I started this. I was like, I just want to chat with golf guys. So let's do a podcast. Mike and I used to work together at Hewlett Packard, and I wanted to start this 4 years ago, and life just happened, so I couldn't. And then now I had an opportunity. I reached out to Mike in November of last year, and I said, "Hey, let's actually do this. Do you want to do this with me?" He's like, "Yeah, let's do it." And
love that.
And we just kind of started rolling. And a guy that I went to golf school with in San Diego, he reached out to me, and then he introduced me to Kevin Lucas, and then that kind of just started like a little snowball effect. And a guy I went to college with, Matt Picanzo. I think you might know him. I think everybody might know him in the mini tour circuits. I don't know.
I've heard the name, but I don't know him personally.
Okay. And then we had him on and things like that, and just kind of snowballed. So, and then we met Katie through Kevin. And
okay.
Then obviously we met you through Katie, and here we go. So
here we are.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you're a lefty because of which hand this is on. Nice Ontario, by the way.
You're actually, Alex, you are our back-to-back lefties on the show.
No kidding.
So we had our last episode was with Matt Ryan, and he's lefty.
Okay. Yeah.
And then actually Mike is lefty as well. So
yeah, awesome.
I'm outnumbered. I think we should just continue to find lefties and have them on the show.
Right, like a lefties only podcast.
A lefties only.
See how long that could go.
See, there you go. That's yours. After when your golf career is up, Alex, just lefties only, and just chat with all the left guys.
It's a small market, though.
I was gonna say it might be
it's a small market.
Give it a 3-week show.
Yeah,
we had all 5 people on.
Yeah, exactly right. We talked to everyone.
Oh, that's good. Well, he's Alex Beach. He's a PGA Class A professional, also a Korn Ferry Tour member. Grew up in Stillwater, Minnesota. Alex, I want to start right there. What's the coldest round of golf you've ever played in?
Oh, gosh. I remember vividly a tournament in high school. It was about 29 and snowing, and I refused to take my winter gloves off the entire round. It was up in Brainerd, Minnesota, which is beautiful, but it was snowing and it was cold, and that's about as miserable as I've ever been, I think.
And they kept you playing?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's nothing.
Yeah, it's not much. I mean, I know that makes me sound soft, but we've certainly endured worse weather. But I know to have to play golf, I think that's about as cold as it's ever been.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, I've played colder, but that was all voluntary. We used to play in a charity, January 1st, doesn't matter what the weather was, kind of thing, and it was 0 degrees outside. It was so cold they let us drive our car on the cart path. So my buddy had a Buick. We cranked the heat, popped the trunk, and played, and everything was concrete. You couldn't hold a green. It was ridiculous. But
I mean, were the conditions even playable though? The greens have to be rock hard, yeah.
For mine, they were. Yeah, you'd hit a wedge into the green and it'd bounce 20 feet in the air. And the worst part of it was I was playing with college buddies, and some group of old guys show up and like say they shot a 58 or something, and the pros just threw them out. It's like there's no way in hell.
Alex, how about you during that round? I mean, was it, could you score? I mean, were balls literally just bouncing on the green, carrying an 8 iron and you just,
This was a long time ago, but I've certainly played a lot of golf in the early spring or the late fall when it's cold. And I think, there's so many days that differ. Like one day it could be 50 and the next day it could be 25 and snowing. So there's a lot of instances where I've played where the snow was kind of melting on contact. It was certainly chilly, but the ground maybe was not frozen yet. One of the perks you get playing in the winter is there's no water hazards. So,
yeah.
those lakes, they freeze over. I've played off lakes many times. Us Minnesotans, we do crazy things like ice fishing and play hockey. So it's kind of just, right up the alley of everything else we do. But I've certainly played a lot of cold weather golf, and my goal from this point forward, and has been for years, is never to be that cold again. So that's kind of the Florida plan.
Is there a YouTube video you somewhere hitting off a lake and then falling through? I've seen a few of those.
I hope not.
Now, Alex, I don't hear the Minnesotan accent in yet. Do you still have that from time to time? Does it come out in certain words or certain sentences?
Yeah, there's a couple words that comes out, and a lot of people say that I have a very neutral accent, which I'm grateful for. Unfortunately, Minnesota is not like as attractive of an accent as maybe like a British one or Australian. So when I go home and when I'm around my mother, bless her heart, she is about as stereotypical Minnesotan as you get. And I think it's one of those deals where even in, New Jersey or Florida, wherever, when you're surrounded by it, you kind of fall back into it. And
right.
I'll catch myself when I go home and visit, start dropping O's a little bit. And, oh, hey guys, how are you? Hey, bud. But no, I think for the most part, I've doused it a little bit, but it still exists. I mean, there's a lot of, there's this guy I follow on Instagram, Charlie Barons, who kind of makes fun of Midwestern accents. And it literally is my childhood watching his videos. So it's a real thing, but I don't have a lot of it anymore, thankfully.
Now you considered the late start in golf. Now you said you did play during high school. So like, when did you start to say, gosh, I'm pretty good at this game. Let's see if I can, take it to the next step. And because you're 31 now, right?
Correct.
When did you kind of get in that mindset of like, okay, I want to be a golf professional?
It's all happened so kind of systematically. I played 4 years of golf in high school, large high school, and just outside Minneapolis, very competitive. I was fortunate to make varsity 4 years. My senior year, I think I was all state, all conference and things like that. We had some success as the team, and going into college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was not tapped into the high level amateur golf circuit. I never played state opens. I never played, AJGAs or anything like that. And so I was kind of just relying on the information I had around me. And, for the most part back there, you kind of go to like University of Minnesota, Wisconsin, a Big Ten school, or a smaller private school. And, I'm kind of deciphering things. And my next door neighbor just happened to go to Ferris State and do the golf management program there. And I graduated high school in 2007. So kind of right when the economy was about its lowest point. And I remember thinking, here I've got all these friends that went to great schools with great degrees, and they're coming back and they really can't find a job. So at the time, the PGM school had like 100% postgraduate job placement. And I'm thinking, hey, here's kind of a perfect world. I really like golf. I know I need to get a degree and to pursue things that I want. So it provided me 4 years. I didn't play on the team. Was I good enough? Maybe. But, it allowed me to really enjoy school. I had all the coursework. I came out with 20 months of paid internship. I got a chance to travel, was a Class A professional. I got, 2 degrees, and I had a network and I had a job immediately. So, at the time of my life, it was the perfect thing for me. And I think when I started working, I spent 3 years in the DC area. And then I moved to New Jersey and worked at Ridgewood Country Club for a guy named David Reesner. And I started looking around the golf business and said, if I'm going to be in this business, who are the most successful people and kind of what are their traits? And in the Northeast, the majority of those guys and girls were really good players. And I've always been competitive. I've always been very athletic. That always came somewhat natural to me. I taught myself how to play golf. I've never really had formal instruction. It was just a blend of playing hockey and baseball and sports. And a lot of trial and error. But when I got up there, I decided I really wanted to take playing to the next step. And so I started playing with better people. I started taking winters off and coming to Florida with the assumption if I played year round, I would give myself a better chance to compete at a higher level. And, sitting here today, that decision I made 3 or 4 years ago certainly paid off. And I think I'm still very much in the middle of my journey to get to the heights that I want. And I'm kind of doing it a very unique way relative to how most guys got on tour. And, certainly there aren't a lot of PGA club professionals pursuing this, but I've got so much support from them. And, I've really earned everything along the way. It hasn't come easy, but at the same time, I've had so much support and help from people that, the journey has been incredible. I'm excited to see where it goes. But as I sit here today, it's already been pretty special. So it's been fun, but it just happened over time. I mean, it was never something I blatantly said, like, I want to play tour golf. I think deep down I did, because it's the highest level someone could play golf at. But I was always hesitant to make that jump from like giving up my career to pursue it, because as we all know, it's not easy. Mm-hmm. And right now I'm just very blessed to kind of have the best of all worlds, and we'll see where we end up.
How nervous were you on the first tee of your PAT?
PAT?
Yeah.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I failed it the first time. I was nervous. It was my second or third week of college. So I had just moved to Lincoln. It was blowing, 50. And, there's no trees out there. So we're totally exposed. I ended up missing it by one shot. And I'm thinking, man, this is hard. Like, how am I going to do this? Well, the next time I played, I think I shot like 63, 66. And, that took a little pressure off of everything. Yeah. But, that was kind of the first step. And I know that tournament freaks a lot of people out. So it's always a nice one to be done with and look back on.
More nervous, that moment or your first tee of your first PGA Championship?
PGA Championship by far. And I'll tell you the funniest part. I don't know how many people have told this story. So my first PGA Tour event, my first tour event was the PGA Championship in Charlotte in 2017. So I had just qualified through the PGA Professional National Championship, which was kind of an accomplishment in of itself. 3 years prior, I ended up in the hospital with a blood clot in my leg on my way to the first PNC I ever qualified for, which felt just incredibly unfair and was such a nervous experience. Fortunately, I'm healthy now. Everything's good. So to kind of come back from that, make it, travel to Oregon, play well. And I remember flying to Charlotte. I had one of my best friends who still caddies for me and is kind of my quasi manager. He flew down with me. We played Sunday before all the fans were there. And my other roommate caddied for me, like just a crazy experience. And I knew, that tee time I was playing late on Thursday, and I was paired with Kevin Na and Sean O'Hare. And I had some great practice rounds with Luke Donald and some other guys on tour. And I didn't feel nervous during the practice rounds or even on the range. And this is back when there was fans, and there was 50,000 people a day, and I'm signing autographs. And it's such a out of body experience, because, that little kid asking for an autograph was me a few years ago. But I think that's still to this date, the coolest thing that any pro golfer gets to do is have that like relationship with the fans. And I just enjoy like having banter with people. So I really enjoyed that. But walking to the first tee, nerves kind of started to settle in. It was like showtime. And a ton of people had traveled down to see me. And at the time I was working at Baltusrol. And I remember as I'm going down the line of my friends and everyone that I kind of knew was there. And I get to the end and I'm kind of, I'm in the zone. I'm kind of blurred out. And I look up and there's the general manager of Baltusrol, who I didn't know was there. And he legitimately scared me. He's like, Alex, like, go play well. And I'm like, okay, like now this is serious. And I remember walking over the tower to the first tee and meeting Kevin and Sean. And I've never wanted to get off a tee box quicker in my life. But it was such a cool experience. And looking back on it, I laugh on it. And, that moment, I think any professional golfer can go back to that moment and how stressful it is, but it's also that made me so much better and so much stronger having gone through some of those experiences. And now, everything is certainly relative to moments like that, but that's as nervous as I've ever been. There's no question.
So given your path in golf, does that make the PGA your favorite major?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I've been fortunate to play in 3. I think the Masters certainly has a special place in everyone's heart. To play that would be incredible. But the PGA Championship I love because, certainly speaking to my story as a club professional, I mean, there's no other tournament out there in the world that's giving us a chance to compete in it every year.
Sure.
Kind of represent our brand. And, the PGA does such a great job growing golf in many different ways. And, selfishly, I've been fortunate to play in a few of them, and I hope to play in many more. But just the amount of support that week has, what it does for, the junior golf program, all the PGA initiatives and things like that. So I think for that reason, being that we run it and I've gotten to know everyone involved that runs that event, it's probably my favorite and most special, certainly closest to my heart.
Talk about that course setup. I read that you won the to get into the PGA, you won the 2019 Assistant PGA Pro and then the PGA Professional Championship same year, and that got you exempt into 6 events, I think, on tour.
Yes, if you win the PGA National Championship, you get the top 20 gets into the PGA Championship, and then by winning, you get 6 exemptions on the PGA Tour. So 3 opposite field events and 3 open events that they kind of let me select, which is really cool.
That is good. So going into the PGA Championship, obviously COVID had already hit and it was kind of rescheduled. What was that like, just with no fans? You just hotel, golf course, eat, sleep, repeat. How do you get pumped up to play in a major?
It's a great question because it was so weird. Fortunately, Harding Park was my 3rd experience, so I had some idea of what to expect in terms of how the week is structured, how I'm going to feel, the things that I need to do to be successful. And that goes back to that first tee shot in Charlotte and what I've learned since then. But it was so weird because it was the first time that I was going to a big event like that where there was no one else with me that was going. I couldn't really bring family. I couldn't really bring friends. They limited the amount of access we had. And certainly with COVID, that was still kind of fresh in everyone's mind. And, even traveling at that point still kind of felt like, was this the right thing to do? Getting there and playing and practicing without fans was weird. I played practice rounds with a lot of great guys, and, you don't get as fired up. It's not, I don't want to say it's as fun. I mean, the fans really are what make the tour different than just playing golf. I think there's an added element to that. And I think a lot of guys had a lot of early success not having to play in front of fans. It's definitely different. I think if anyone tells you differently, they're lying to you. Standing over a putt with a buzz, I mean, you can hear everything people say, good, bad, and indifferent. But at the same time, it provided, I think, a really cool atmosphere. I remember on Tuesday, I warmed up right next to Tiger. And I think there was a bit more of a calmness around them. You could kind of speak a little more freely. Being that there was really no one else there, you had some freedom to kind of move about a little bit more. Some of the guys didn't have to practice as early to avoid the crowds. And, some of those things that I think the general fan wouldn't even realize. Coming and going was a lot easier, but it was tough too, because like you said, when you finish golf, they kind of give you to-go food and you go back to your hotel. I'm the type of person, especially in a great city like San Francisco, who would love to go out to dinner and, when the time is right, kind of explore the whole area. And there was really none of that. But I thought for me, and it kind of came true, that it would be the best chance I had to play well. And, I was low club pro, but I ended up missing the cut by 3 shots. And it was certainly well within my grip. And so it was frustrating not to make it, but it was definitely not as nerve-wracking out there. It kind of felt more like a normal event without the people, but certainly not as special either. And I really hope fans come back soon.
Do you have a word with Tiger?
We chatted. Yeah, it was just it happened to be a spot that was open. I didn't seek him out by any means, and we got some cool airtime, but yeah, just cordial stuff. Joe is a Connecticut guy. I spend my summers up there, his caddy.
Right. Yeah.
And again, I've been lucky to be around the tour for a long time, both working at clubs that have hosted events and just through my network, and now, being fortunate to play in some of them. So I remember working up, and Stenson was behind me with Fooch, and Fooch has become a good friend down here in Jupiter. And so, the more I show up to those, the more it feels like home. And I think that's really the key to being able to play well out there. And and taking something like the fans away does make it a little more comforting. But yeah, it was definitely a weird week. There's no other way to put it.
It would seem to me that it just turns into like a big money game on the weekend. Got some pressure because it's your job, but it's not like you got a bunch of people cheering for you.
Right, exactly. And I'll tell you the strangest thing. They converted the apparel shop, the merchandise tent, which was massive, into the locker room. And every player's table we had a high top table and a locker that was 6 feet away from somebody else's. And because California was so strict, we had to eat our meals there. So it felt like we were in third grade again. You kind of go up, like you get your food, you waddle over to your little station, you sit there and like, hey guys, do you want to like hang out or talk? But everyone just kind of had their head down, and that was just one of those things that week that was so strange. But
like going to the men's room and there's a wall of urinals, you can't stand too close because that's weird.
Right, exactly. Okay, everyone's kind of like 6 feet apart, like kind of doing pleasantries and not looking the wrong way. And yeah, it was different.
What's your style of course that you prefer? Do you like the Harding Park, classic trees, tall trees, openness?
I do. I for some reason play harder golf courses better. I'm reasonably long. I mean, that's changing every day with some of these kids out there, but I feel like I focus better in the harder golf courses. I tend to play better on like a Bethpage or a Harding Park than maybe one of the old school courses that's a little shorter. Greens are really difficult. I don't love Bermuda. Being from the north, I don't want to play on it, but also understanding that's part of the job. I've learned how to, do well on it. But I think Harding was a great test. It was funny looking back at the last few events I've played: Bethpage, Harding Park, Torrey Pines, all municipal golf courses, all massive golf courses. And I played reasonably well. I mean, I hit it really good at Torrey Pines and just couldn't make a putt on POA, and hit it poorly at Harding Park and made everything. So I do prefer those style courses. I've worked at Congressional, I've worked at Baltusrol, worked at Ridgewood. So I've been very fortunate, even Westchester, to practice at courses that are that style. So maybe that lends to a little bit of my comfort there, rather than some of maybe the more modern courses.
What makes a golf course hard?
Bad shots.
Honest answer right there.
Yeah, no, every golf course is easy if you hit it well, but I think it's just the outside factors.
I'm going to write that down, Alex. Every golf course is easy if you hit it well. That's the biggest if, right?
That's the caption.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's we find a way to make it harder. I think, in a tournament, you've got all the pressure, you've got all the lead up. Are you doing the right things? Is the weather going to be a factor? I think what makes the course hard is just our expectation. I mean, I've gone out and played some of my best golf in the worst conditions. And, if the three of us went and played right now, even at a tour golf course, and we played it tomorrow in a tour event, it's different.
Right.
But obviously, length is becoming a factor. Harding Park, it was cold and very long. So there's certain guys that you're getting kind of taken out. I don't necessarily dive into all the equipment disagreements now. I think, that's just how athletic these players are. I mean, you see what these guys are doing behind the scenes, where I think the real work takes place. And there's a reason they're hitting the ball 350 yards, and it's not necessarily technology. But what makes a golf course hard? I mean, anything. There's so many changing factors, but I honestly just think if you kind of stick to your game and play well, every course is manageable, and you got to beat the field, not the course. I don't think a course is ever really lost. So that's what it comes down to, in my opinion.
So and we talk about the distance debate that apparently exists. We haven't talked to anybody that says anything other than what you said. These guys are working hard. We have better athletes playing. It's not the ball. It's not the driver. It's not, why is the PGA insisting that there is a distance problem and looking at clubs if nobody seems to agree with them?
Well, I think it relates to such a small population of golf. I mean, I know the majority of what we talk about is tour level golf. What are the tour players doing? What are these long drive people doing? But, for 99% of golfers, and this is close to my heart because, I teach and I promote the game, and I'm at a club every day working with amateurs. We're always trying to find ways to make it easier. I don't really think there's a lot of shortcuts in golf. But if there is an advantage, you should take it. And I think, on the tour level, they're just that good.
Right.
You look at like the average club speed, the average driving distance, it hasn't really gone up that much over the years on average.
On average,
yes,
right.
there are people that are becoming outliers, but they're not winning every week. So, there's more, I think, involved than just how far the ball goes. And I think any good tour player would tell you it really comes down to short game. You can set yourself up, distance helps, but if you can't chip and putt, it doesn't make much of a difference.
Yeah, I wish they would talk more about course layout. Let's grow up the rough. Let's bake out the greens.
Yeah, make it hard. Why not?
They haven't changed equipment standards in forever, and guys are just beasts.
Yeah, I agree with you. You can make the golf courses harder. There's weeks where it's fun to see these guys shoot 20, 30 under par, and the people see the scores on the Corn Ferry Tour. Those courses are nowhere near as hard as some of the courses you play on the big tour. But you got to make pars and birdies, and I agree. Make the courses harder. Don't necessarily make them longer, but make you can play a Bethpage with 4-inch rough, but you can't advance it, and it's still a fair test, but it's hard.
Well, it's all grass. If you just narrow the fairway at 320 now, it used to be they used to put bunkers at 280, and now it needs to just play stuff differently.
Exactly.
I think if golfers just focused on ball striking and putting, then they're going to play well. I mean, look at Colin Morikawa. He's not the longest guy in the world, but he's such a great ball striker.
Yeah. And I think, guys like him, guys like, Xander, I've gotten to know very well. And they don't have weaknesses. They hit it far enough. They do everything extremely well. And therefore, they're not going to have those one-off weeks where, okay, this is your week to go and kind of bomb and gouge it. And, so I agree. I think it's more of a well-rounded thing, and ball striking and putting will take care of a lot of it.
What do you think but why now though? Like why is the USGA and the RNA talking about doing this now? And they didn't talk about it when Tiger was the longest guy on tour and John Daly was hitting it and Bubba Watson was hitting it. And like, what are they trying to accomplish in your opinion from rolling it back? Like, what's the end result here? Are we going to take it back 5 yards and say, there we go? I honestly am confused.
I am too. And there's so many conversations about it. I mean, listen, I can tell you as someone who tries every day to get better at this game. If there's something that we can do that would help, great. I feel like part of it, they just want to have a say on things. And, but again, it relates to such a small percentage of golfers, in no other sports are we talking about making the soccer net smaller or making the hoop higher or making, the goalpost more narrow. So, these athletes are getting more athletic. I mean, look at any professional sport. But again, I still think it's a hard enough game that it's fair. I don't think there's anything going on right now that really needs to be looked at that's changing. But there are things you can do to the course and pick venues. And it's funny how, they want to make the ball go shorter and the equipment go shorter, but they keep going to the same golf courses and trying to make them longer and longer and longer.
Yeah, all you got to do is watch a Golf Channel Classic from the early 90s, and every guy in that tournament looks like some guy you'd meet at the bar.
Right, because they are those guys.
Right, and nowadays they're all cut guys. I mean,
it's a full-time job.
Gary.
I mean, the athletic ability and the strength of these guys, it's crazy. And I've gotten into it in a big way, and it's made a huge impact on my game. If you're willing to put the time in, unless you're just that gifted, there are results to be had. And I work close with chiropractors and TPI guys, and I've got this team around me and personal trainers who, there's ways to get better that doesn't involve a little white ball or the driver. We've tried everything, and I think the easiest way to get better is just to improve me, and then they can fit the equipment around me, but it's not the other way around.
Right.
I love it. You're a field player, so you really didn't take a formal lesson. You were self-taught, and now, full circle, you're giving lessons to people who were once like you. So I love that. Talk about that a little bit. Like, since you didn't have a lesson and you didn't have maybe a mentor, Like, what's your teaching style to folks that take lessons from
Yeah,
Alex?
absolutely. On paper, it does seem kind of weird that a guy that's never taken a lesson teaches, but I think what makes it so great for me to most of these members and amateurs and even pros that I help teach is I've gone through everything that they're going through.
Mm.
And I kind of figured out a way to get through it on my own. Certainly present day with everything. I mean, I work with people on things, but I don't have a coach. You mentioned mentors. I have a lot of mentors with people who I've picked up things from. I've received advice, and I've always learned. Let's hear how the best in the business do it. What does Tiger say about his rounds? How does he handle situations? And I remember, hearing him say things like, he gets frustrated after a shot. You can be as mad as you want, but by the time you get to the next ball, it's done. It's like, okay, like I can do that. I get upset out there, and like little things like that are around the green. And I've worked with some really talented professionals and just kind of picked up how they think about things. But when it transfers to teaching, I think I take everyone, where they're at, and we got to talk about where they want to go. I'm a huge believer in having kind of a roadmap, whether it's a career goal or a golf fix, and, how much time are they willing to put into it? What's their ability level? What's realistic? And I kind of start there, and we just work together. I certainly understand the golf swing. I understand the biomechanics. I understand the science. So, I can get as technical as they want me to, even though I'm not necessarily a technical player for my own game. But it's fun to me. I love making people get better and kind of, achieve their goals, as at the same time I'm working to achieve some of mine. So it's really easy to get along with students. I think we have a great time, and I've been fortunate, I think, to get good enough at this game where, I can help just about anybody get better in whatever area they want to.
Do you ever get anybody who's completely unrealistic? Because that's a huge thing when you list off things. I think a lot of people don't realize. I mean, sports in general, but golf, it takes a unique amount of time to really see some improvements and stuff. So you get some really outlandish expectations and stuff.
Absolutely. But that's why I start every lesson there. And certainly, I teach just outside New York City, where we have a lot of members who are, very type A, very successful, very, quick, instant fix, instant gratification. Why can't I do this? I've been able to do everything else so quickly. And golf is a humbling game when it comes to that. And so I think the first thing that I do with a student is, really find common ground and understand what we can fix and what it's going to take for them to really achieve their goal. But, I've got kind of a calming demeanor about me when I teach. I think that helps. I'm very patient. I kind of owe that to my Midwest upbringing. So, we take it one shot at a time, and it's all the same things that I've gone through, and it's taken me years to figure out, and they're expecting to do it in an hour. So, there's certain parts I think you can get across very quickly, but that's, I think, part of the fun of teaching is kind of finding that way with every student. How do you get really through to them? I think being honest to them helps a lot. I'm not going to lie to them and say, hey, I think that's attainable in this amount of time. But, I also think the most rewarding thing in golf is achieving something you've set a goal onto. So it's kind of that fun back and forth. And, I've been yelled at, but I think we also get those texts that say, hey, I had a great round. And, those little moments of gratification, which are really what we look for.
What do they yell at you about?
Oh, you get frustrated. Like I get these guys and gals that'll take like a 9 o'clock lesson and they're on the tee at 10:05. And so you make a couple changes and exactly going into it what it is. They're coming out looking for a Band-Aid or a swing thought for the day. And, maybe they hook one off the third tee and all the range was hitting nice cuts. And they're like, you could probably hear them from there. My phone starts vibrating, but that's just the ebbs and flows of teaching. And
you never take a lesson before your round, right? You never do that.
I wouldn't recommend it, but who am I to say? For the weekend warrior, if it's the only time you have, I guess you fit it in. But
how are you juggling that now? So what's your schedule for being a playing professional and a teaching professional? Because you're still at Westchester. So
I am.
Yeah. How do you juggle?
Well, I mean, I'm so lucky to have this position. I joined their team, gosh, going on 3 years now ago, and they hired me the role of just playing and teaching. It's a role that a good friend of mine, Danny Balin, had, who's now a head professional, but arguably one of the best club playing professionals in the country, guy I look up to, and I've competed against a lot. And they really sat me down and said, "Listen, like you're a great player. You're a great teacher. We want you just to do that." And so I'm lucky to have no other responsibilities. And then 2 years ago, when I won all those tournaments, we had a meeting in the fall, and I wasn't even convinced I wanted to go to Q school. And my boss really pushed me. He said, "I think you need to take this opportunity and go." And so I did. I wrote the check and went and got through. And so with all of these changes, they've been so supportive. So the way we structure it now is in the summer months, I live up in Connecticut, right outside the club, which is in Westchester, Rye, New York. I teach and play with the members as much as I can, but they give me the full, leisure to travel and compete in events when I need to. So they kind of let me create my own schedule, and I'm just so lucky to have them on my team. And, I keep in touch with all the members, and I get to travel, and it just kind of adds to the story. And going back there on my weeks off, it's kind of like going home, and it's so fun to share my experiences with them as I'm teaching, or, go out and spend 4 hours with some members or grab dinner. So they've allowed me to really stay in that great occupation that I love and I've been really good at, but also not holding me back in any way to go and pursue, this whole tour thing, which is just so special because it's hard to find. I think you can talk to a lot of pros, and, I get the mixed reviews from my colleagues on what I'm doing, but, I've worked hard to get to this point, and I'm just lucky that I have a club that supports me to do it. And it's awesome. So that's kind of how we structure it. And then in the winters, I'm in Jupiter, Florida, and play and travel. So hopefully, the goal would be to play full time and be at Westchester when I can. But right now it's kind of the back and forth in all good ways.
First big tournament check. What'd you treat yourself to?
I'll be really honest with you. Not much. I mean, they gave me a watch. I got a lot of perks with that. I mean, I guess if we're talking about the PNC check, which was the largest one I've received, at one time, I'll be honest with you. I'm big in investing and trading, and I invested it and, kind of used it as a jump board to make a lot more. So, that's how I've kind of been able to take as much time off as I have and still play and travel. And, I'm a big saver of my money, but we did get a couple nice things with that money. So it's all been good. I'm very humble about it, but it is nice and I think important. I was talking to a friend at dinner last night about this, about setting goals and kind of rewarding yourself when you achieve those. Just, little things that you look at every day. It's the reminder of the hard work and not taking it for granted, but certainly enjoying the successes along with all the failures.
Sure.
Most well-known person, celebrity that you've given a lesson to is?
Oh, man.
It was Tiger Woods at the PGA, right? You gave him a couple tips.
Yeah, I guess why not? Because the picture that I got of him, he was staring at me, and I don't know why, because I'm guessing there's nothing I was doing that was impressing him. Maybe it was the complete opposite. He's like, "How the heck?"
Who let the range guy on the phone?
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. I really haven't taught a lot of well-known celebrities. I've played a ton of golf with them. And I think that's what typically happens. Like if there's someone in town, oftentimes I just get booked to play with them and we go and play 18 holes rather than spending time on the range. But, I've been fortunate. I've spent some time around US presidents and high ranking officials in the public office. And
very cool.
Yeah, certainly a lot of actors and, so many athletes. And as golf is, you go to an event, one of these charity events or pro-ams, and you meet so many great people, and the Rolodex in your phone is crazy. And when they're in town, I'm fortunate they hit me up and we go play and have a lot of fun. So
okay, so most famous person in your phone.
Oh man, I mean, outside of some of the tour guys, I don't even think I can say that. But
okay,
there's some good names. I don't like dropping names, but it's
yeah. No, you're good.
And I'm so
you're a
not
humble
that
guy.
I like having fun on the course. Doesn't matter who it is. But as golf is, sometimes you bump into some pretty neat people.
What do pro golfers try to do too much of?
Think, probably. It's funny. I think everyone is so unique in their own right, but I think there's no way not to overthink tour life. And certainly I'm on the front end of it compared to some people. But you're always like questioning, am I doing the right things? Am I supposed to be doing this? Should I stay here? Should I go in a day early? Should I leave? Should I go practice more? Should I do this and that? And I think the guys who have gotten really good have either gone through it enough to know really what they want, and what they need to do, and like who are the right people around them. Because again, like being self-taught, like you walk on the range of a PGA Tour event, every player seems to have 4 or 5, 6 people with them. You've got a manager, you've got a physio, you've got a nutritionist. And so you start thinking like, should I have all those things? Should I be putting a, foresight down on every shot on the practice round? Should I be trying new equipment every week? Should I be doing things like that? And I think, getting to the answer of that question for yourself is a long journey. But, they do everything so well and they just do it so different. I think it comes down to just figuring out what works for you and riding with it.
You just sound like a teacher. That's so great. Okay. So on the flip side, what do amateurs try to do too much? What do you see?
Oh gosh, it comes back to, I think, the same thing, but I think expectation is the biggest problem most amateurs have. You get the player who maybe plays a couple times a week and they have expectations to get so much better, but they're not doing anything to really get better. Right. And that's where the frustration in golf comes in. You've got the people who can go out and shoot 110 and have 12 Bud Lights and have the time of their life because they have no expectation. As soon as you throw expectation into the scheme of things, now you have a goal. It sits in the back of your head all day. You get tense. It's like we had this conversation. You get paid to have this. What's the difference between the driving range and the golf course? Everything. Like, it's not flat. There's hazards. There's expectation. If you miss a shot on the driving range, we just grab another ball and, right, dust another one out there. You miss one on the course. Well, now your buddies are making fun of you. Maybe you just lost a bet. You lost your last Pro V1. You're going to break your irons. Like, all these thoughts start going into your head. And I think truly that's what it comes down to. If you go out with the mindset you're just going to have fun and you're going to enjoy the day, you will. If you go out and say, I need to break par, and you don't, which, is like a Monday qualifier, like showing up, knowing you have to shoot 63, 4, 5 is never easy. But you just learn, I think, as amateurs and pros alike, it's one hole, one shot at a time, and, make the goal as small and attainable at times to not have like that big picture thought in your head and don't get ahead of yourself. But I think, pros and amateurs relate more than they would think to one another. It's just different levels of the game. But I think everyone goes through the same trials and tribulations and, struggles and successes. There's no immunity for that.
I see a lot of problems with amateurs of just being honest with themselves. They hit one drive 300 yards one time, and so that's what they carry every time. Or
right,
175 yards out, and this is an 8-iron. I'm like, it's not an 8-iron. You hit that one time.
That's a great point. I think the biggest mistake amateurs make is they don't take enough club. If you watch good tour players, they might miss left and right, but very rarely do they miss long and short.
Yeah,
they've got cover numbers. They've got numbers they're protecting. Amateurs, like you said, like, oh, I hit a drive 300 once, so I can carry it 300. Like, well, you carried it 240 and it rolled 65 yards. And just because I'm hitting a 7-iron from 190 doesn't mean you should be. I wish a lot of manufacturers would just take the number off the bottom of the club, because if you take ego out of golf, and, again, being a field player, I had a ton of knockdowns. I worked the ball a lot, and the guys find it really hard to club off me because it could be 150 yards, but I might chip a 7-iron with, or it could rip a wedge too. It's all time and place, and you have to have those different shots. But very rarely do I see good amateur players take enough club. All day they're ending up short, which leaves them in bunkers. And, that course management aspect kind of feeds itself into the game. But I think it's all kind of stemming from not taking enough club and thinking you can pull off shots that you realistically cannot pull off.
Yeah. Now, Alex, you're no stranger to winning. After all the research I've done to you, so you've won on like section events and those, state opens, New York State opens, Jersey sections. So you know how to win at the professional level. So my question is, what's it going to take to move up and take that next step and win on the Corn Ferry Tour level or the PGA Tour level for you?
Sure. I have been very fortunate to win a lot. In my mind, I don't think that way because, there's, for every title I've won, you've lost probably many, 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 many more. But, learning how to compete on that level, learning how to get used to that lifestyle. There's no way I would have been able to win a PNC without having played in a PGA Championship, becoming comfortable playing in front of people when you have a camera in your face and learning how to deal with that and how to manage an event. I mean, honestly, the hardest thing for me right now is getting into a Corn Ferry event, just having conditional status. And it's been such a unique year for players because of so much time off, and so many guys are, playing more events than they normally would. And so I'm kind of stuck in a little tough spot there, but I think it'll work itself out with good play. And, certainly on the PGA Tour level, I've played with enough people who have confirmed, that I'm good enough to be out there. I mean, there's a lot of people that are. I think you realize how deep all these tours are. I mean, look at the Corn Ferry Tour last week when the last alternate got in, Hayden, and he won. And I think there's a lot of guys out there that just don't have, good enough status to get in, but they can win. And so, I believe in myself that I can do it. I've played with enough guys and we're all good enough. It's just having, that really good day on the right day and doing it 4 times over. Making the cut at the PGA Championship would have been huge, I think. But, you always learn more from a failure, I think. And as I look back on it, every week is a learning experience. Every week is a growing opportunity. And, one of these days, those are all going to compile to what I hope is another victory. And, I certainly am grateful for the ones that I have, but I know how hard the next one's going to be. But, that's what the work's for every day. And I hope dearly one day it comes true.
Is there any trash talking on tour, like true trash talking?
Absolutely. It's epic. I mean, I would say there's certainly less in the actual rounds, but practice rounds and on the range in the locker room, it's no different than your average country club on a Saturday.
Just jabbing each other.
100%. I mean, yeah. And it's fun because you get to know some of the guys on tour pretty well, and I'm sure some of the regulars, they play so much together. I mean, granted, we've all learned recently you have to watch out for hot mics. Yeah. But there's a time.
I see you're wearing your big horsey shirt. So
yeah, one wrong word away from that. But no, I think a lot of guys have fun out there, and at the end of the day, it's just golf. I mean, we're all lucky to play it for a living. It is no different. There's epic trash talk. There's banter. There's they make it fun, and they honestly have a good time. I think there's a lot of time to be serious, but the majority of the time is spent pretty freewheeling, and it's a lot of fun to be a part of.
So what's your strongest part of your game? Putting, irons, short game, tee box?
I would say driving it and wedge play, and it's certainly not putting, but it's coming around. I mean, I typically drive it very straight, far enough. So on any given day when I'm playing well, I'll hit the majority of the fairways. And I've got pretty good touch with my wedges getting up and down. And putting was one thing that was always holding me back a little bit. And so I've put a lot of work into that over the years. And, getting it to a point, I think, there's no real weakness in my game. Maybe longer irons. I'm a little steep, so those are a little trickier for me. But having played now a while, I've gotten to know my game. I know what works for me. And like I said earlier, I think in some of my first tour starts, I tried to play the game of the guys I was playing with, thinking, oh, well, they're on tour. This is how they play this hole. This is how they attack it. This is their mindset. And it may have been different than what got me there. And so now I'm comfortable kind of competing as my own self and hitting the ball the way I know how, and being maybe a little more aggressive at times. But under normal circumstances, I would say short game and driving the ball are 2 of my biggest strengths.
So it also sounded like you have quite a bit of shots in the arsenal. 150, you might chip a 7 or rip a wedge. What's your go-to comfortable, have to stick this one close shot?
Well, I always say nothing but a cut. I mean, the driver is set
Butter
up
cuts,
with
baby. Butter cuts.
butter cuts. You can make a lot of money hitting a butter cut.
Yeah.
If it comes down to it, yeah. But I mean, a soft cut off the tee, I play it all day long. And, then I really do look at a shot in a creative way. I can kind of just see things, and people ask me all the time, like, what did you change to hit a draw or hit a fade? And, because I teach golf, I know, but the real answer is, I don't know. Like, I just saw it and I set up differently, and I've hit thousands and thousands of golf balls, and I kind of see windows. I play very well when it gets windy and when the weather gets tough. I think I owe part of that to growing up in Minnesota and playing in college at Nebraska, where it's always windy and kind of crummy. I know how to flight it. I've played with a lot of guys who are incredible players that just cannot figure out how to do it. So you get a perfectly calm day, it's anyone's game. You get a windy day, and all of a sudden feel like I have a huge advantage.
Right.
But I very rarely look at a shot like this as just stock standard straight. It's doing all the quick math, figuring out where you really want to be. And then I think I just see it, whatever I'm comfortable with to get that ball there, whether it's hitting a high, low cut, draw, whatever it might be. And I think, tying this back to, tournament golf and expectation, I think I lost some of that creativity early on playing bigger events, because every shot has so much more of a value. And I think it took my creativity and it made it like this. Like, I just need to hit the green somehow. And you kind of tense up, and I'm like, I've never hit that shot before. Like, what is that? It's just, getting away from the game that I know how to play. And so, yeah, I mean, under pressure though, always a little bit of a cut. I mean, I'll just hold it off and swing hard. And if I can take the right side of the golf course out of play, which typically I do, it gets a lot easier.
Folks, remember, he's left-handed.
Yes, exactly.
I messed up on that a couple of weeks ago. I was asking a question about, what if you do this and that, and then question was answered, and I realized that I asked it opposite because I'm a lefty. So,
hey, it happens.
Alex, you're a two-time PGA national champion, and then the low club pro of last year's PGA. What do those mean to you?
A lot. Certainly on a personal level, it's a huge accomplishment. Those were always things that I aspired to win, and always, as a club pro, those are the highest levels we can compete.
Yeah.
So I look at those trophies with just pure admiration every day of, how did this happen? I've made so much sacrifice in moving and taking jobs, but I've built such a great network. And I think the most special part of having those is just the people that I've had with me from the beginning. This was kind of overnight success, but it took a long time to get there. So, for me and my colleagues in the PGA of America, it's awesome. Again, I think I'm trying to do something that not many have, where I'm trying to maybe step out of that comfort and play it professionally. And, but it speaks to the industry. And I like using the story that, any young person that wants to get into it, there's so much you can do with it. A little hard work and team support goes a long way. But I mean, gosh, there's no way I would have told you 5 years ago I thought I would be a national champion once, certainly not twice over. But, those two events changed my life, and they've really opened up so many doors, and getting through Q school and playing on the PGA Cup team. And even though that all happened relatively in 6 months, I was kind of ready for it. And then my goal is just to take those events and parlay it into hopefully bigger and greater things. But, certainly very proud to be a part of that, and what it's done for me career wise, I think has been incredible. But winning in golf at any level is hard, whether it's a club championship, a PGA national championship, or a tour event. I think those moments are so sweet, because you think back to all those long hours, late night in the gym, or, early mornings on the range, and travel, and missed birthdays and missed opportunities. And so it's pretty special. It really is fun to look back on it, but I certainly hope it's not my last one.
A humble and genuine guy, Alex Beach. You talk a lot about your team around you. Who's your team? And
Man, I tell you,
How do they help you? Yeah.
it's so many people now. On the sponsorship side, I've been so lucky to have some great companies. Ralph Lauren, gosh, we've been together 5 or 6 years now. Nike Golf, Casa de Campo, the resort in the Dominican, one of my favorite places, was kind enough we made a really nice deal, and just all these different things that have come along. But I've been with them, and certainly Titleist. I can't leave them out. I've been a Titleist staff member since 2013. And again, all of this changed recently, but these are people who kind of believed in me and supported me before anything happened. And that to me has been the coolest thing. And the friends I've made at all these companies, and, they're certainly part of my network on the tangible end, but I've got so many friends, all these people I've worked with, all these memberships that I've had a chance to work for and with. Like when I won the PNC, I mean, I had over 1,000 text messages. I had like 200 missed calls, and certainly Instagram and Facebook, and all these people, some of whom I may have played with one time, and may not even remember it. They're shooting me messages like, "Hey, man, I'm so proud of you. It's been so fun to follow your journey." And so really that there's so many people outside of family and kind of the immediate people, my coworkers, who let me travel and get away with this crazy life, and just everyone that's made it possible. There are very few situations where I don't walk into a restaurant or a bar and someone comes up and says, "Hey man, like, it's so cool to see it, keep it up." And again, I'm trying to do something I think that's unique in my industry, and I don't want it to be. I want people who are good players to pursue it and not have fear of failure. And I'm just very humbled and very lucky to be that guy, and I've got very high hopes. But yeah, I mean, the support, without having that, I mean, yes, I do this for myself a little bit, but it's so much more fun sharing it with everybody, and bringing, my family's been able to travel with me to some really fun events, and I've taken my friends with me to tour events, and we always kind of laugh at each other. Like, we're inside the ropes at a PGA Championship. 3 years ago, we were just drinking Coors Lights in the stands up there, and how much has changed, but at the same time, how much hasn't. And I think that was the biggest compliment that I've received from friends, is it doesn't feel any different than it did 5 years ago when we were in college. Certainly a lot's changed, but at the same time, I think it's easy to keep a level head in this game because it's pretty humbling, and there are great days, but there's a lot of bad days too.
Did you ever did you ever truly look at the course when you were that guy with the Coors Light in the stand saying, "I'm going to be that guy someday walking inside the ropes"? Did you truly believe that, or did you just know you wanted to get there?
I think deep down, I always wanted to.
Yeah.
I'm always like, what a cool life that is. And even playing in my first few events, a lot of my friends said, like, "You look really comfortable out there." And I'm like, yeah, like, I think it's something deep down I've always wanted to be a part of. And maybe I didn't even realize it for a long time, and didn't really even know how to get there. But then I start kind of figuring out these little things like, oh, if I win the PNC, I get 7 events on tour, and like, that's a pretty cool way to do it. And then, I got through Q school, like, holy crap, like, I have a tour card. Like, it took me a while to pinch myself from that, because it was just a blur. But yeah, deep down, like, every event that I watch now, like, I'm watching it with a little bit of a different lens on. It's more of a, how do I replicate what these guys are doing? I've played with them, I've beaten a lot of them, I haven't beat some of them, but I feel like I'm doing the same stuff. And so, yeah, deep down, like, I'll do whatever it takes to keep staying out there, because it is so much fun, and there's so many great things that come with that life. And but whether I never play another event or I play another 50, it's been awesome. So very grateful, and still kind of, like I said, it hasn't felt real, but it is.
Have you picked you get your exemption for, you said 3 opposites and 3 opens. Have you picked your events?
So yeah, I played 3 of them before COVID. I played the Sony Open in Hawaii. I played the Farmers at Torrey Pines, and I played Puerto Rico. And then I had 3 remaining that I never got to use. So this year I'll use 3 of them. I just committed to Corrales, the Punta Cana PGA Tour event in late March. I'll do a couple Mondays leading up to that. And then as of now, I'm likely going to play the Barracuda in Lake Tahoe midsummer. and I haven't picked out the one open event yet. My hope is I can get us into some Corn Ferry events and, use that week on the PGA Tour in between some of those. But yeah, lucky to have 3 starts, and hopefully I play well at the PNC again this year and make it to Kiowa for the PGA Championship. And, so there's a lot of things that can fill the schedule, but right now, Punta Cana is the only one I've committed to.
It's one of my favorite kind of fun questions would be 30 years from now, who's your honorary 3 at the Masters?
Oh man. Well, God willing, my father. But I think right now it would just be like my good friends, my college roommate, Mark, who's traveled with me, my buddy, Mike, who's traveled with me. We were interns together 5 or 6 years ago, and then see who I'm still friends with in 30 years, a lot can happen, but, that'd be an unbelievable thing to have one day. But again, I can't speak enough to like the people who have been there before any of this happened, the people who are still there supporting me, taking time off their own jobs to travel with me and do things. And, that's really what's made this journey so special. So, but I don't know, 30 years is a lot of time. I don't want to give anyone enough credit that they're going to be loyal to me for 30.
But what about, maybe I cut out at the Masters, who's your honorary starter 3?
Oh, Tiger, Phil, and I'd say Rory.
Okay.
I think, those 3 people taught me a lot about this game, whether indirectly or directly. And I think that would be pretty cool.
Now, you say that believing Rory's going to win a jacket?
There's no reason he can't. I'll tell you that.
That's true.
Well, he's Alex Beach. He's the 2017, 2019, and 2020 Titleist Player of the Year. I want to keep going with this, but I never know how to end these conversations, Alex, because it's about golf, and I don't know where to go from here, but I know it's getting late over there in Florida. So what's really next for you? Are you just going to do those 3 events? You're going to do a lot of Monday qualifiers and just kind of, and then in this summer, are you going to go back to Westchester?
Yeah, the plan is, I'll play those 3 events for sure. Hopefully more, either Monday or getting exemption somehow. I will spend most of the summer back up in the Northeast. There's some events I can play in up there. I can teach if I don't get into events. And then the plan will be come back down to Florida, and, hopefully I don't have to go to Q school again in the fall. But really keep this going and hopefully just catch fire one week and do what we need to do and, solidify better status. But that's going to be kind of the underlying goal of everything for the next foreseeable future. And hopefully it works out.
Awesome.
And you have something into March, you said, right?
Punta Cana PGA Tour event. And then a month later, we've got I'll try to defend the PGA National Championship here in Florida. So at least there's another one on the books, which is nice. It's sometimes hard to build practice when you don't really know what the next event is, but a lot of little things. And then we'll try to get ready for Honda Monday. And then the next week we'll be in Punta Cana, and I'll stay a little bit after that to spend some time at Casa de Campo. So
nice.
Win-win.
Well, we don't want to brag, but you're coming fresh off of a successful podcast, so you're probably going to have a couple of really good tournaments coming up.
Good vibes only, man.
And I'll send you my address for all the cool hand-me-downs you get from Titleist.
Deal. You're in. You're in my circle now. The lefty circle's tough, so I'm happy.
It is really tough.
I always like when I show up to the range and there's like 6 lefties just randomly, like we just kind of all congeal and
it's
like
crazy.
we meant to be there.
I'll tell you, I had a day 2 years ago at Westchester where I taught 7 lefties back to back.
Wow.
After the third one, me and my buddies that I'm teaching next to just started laughing. And most of them were like, yeah, we heard there's a left-handed pro, so I'm finally going to take a golf lesson. I'm like, well, that's not how it works, but
right.
Comprende. I know we're all a little different, but it's funny. You see so many more lefties now than years ago. You go to these Monday qualifiers and all these kids in college, and we're making a comeback slowly but surely.
If you get to Augusta's a left-handed course.
100%.
Just for cuts, for those cuts.
Yeah.
Those cuts alone.
Exactly. They're going to look beautiful amongst all the foliage down there one day.
Everyone's born right-handed. The gifted overcome the deformity.
That's it. That's great.
Alex, this has been great. Thank you very much for
My
joining
pleasure.
us and coming on. And our thanks to Katie for introducing you to us. And we wish you nothing but the best, man. We'll be following you this year, and we'd love to catch up with you later on down the road, as you know, for a follow up and just to see how you're doing.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure, and thank you for having me on. And best of luck with you guys as well. And I hope we cross paths very soon.
Definitely. Thank you, Alex.
Of course, guys.
Have a good one, man.
Take care.
Take care. See ya.
Rough Fairways is executive produced by Eddie Dunn and Mike Sells, and now brought to you by Asher Golf. Go check them out at ashergolf.com. Our thanks again to Alex Beach. What a down-to-earth, genuine guy. Wish him the best. Next week's guest is John Rahm's former caddy, Ben Schur, and we talk about his own journey to play on the PGA Tour. Everybody, thanks for listening. Please have a good week, and please be kind to each other.